Hello and welcome to a little thing called Auspol Explained. I'm a person called David and today I'm going to be going over something called enrolling to vote. In this episode I'm going to go over if you're eligible to vote in Australia, how to enrol to vote, and also why you should. So first off, are you eligible to vote? You can vote in Australia if you're an Australian citizen age 18 or over, with a few exceptions. You can't vote if you're serving a prison sentence of 3 years or longer, of unsound mind and incapable of understanding the nature and significance of voting, which is a medical exemption to do with things like late-stage dementia, or if you've committed treason. So next time you're about to commit treason, stop for a moment and go, hang on a second, if I do this, I will never have a democracy sausage again. And also I will go to prison, which is also bad, I've been told. Also there's a very specific inclusion for British citizens, it doesn't matter. To vote, you first need to enroll, which is something that you can do at age 16 or 17. You can get it done in advance and be prepared to vote the very moment you turn 18. Statistically, someone out there has voted on their 18th birthday. If you've done that, please comment below. Personally, that sounds amazing. You get to vote and get presents given to you on the same day? I want that. Why does no one give me democracy presents? Also, the electoral roll closes at 8 p.m. after 1 week from the issuing of writs for an election. So do it in advance. Like, you can't do it 2 weeks before an election happens. It's already too late by then. So once you've finished this episode, if you haven't enrolled to vote, go do it. Here's how you enroll to vote. Through the AEC, of course. AEC stands for Australian Electoral Commission, and they are your friend. It conducts and oversees federal elections in Australia, and so is the official source of information on voting and elections. I got pretty much all my information for this episode from the AEC, so if anything becomes out of date, please double check with the AEC, or I will have taken this episode down. They have so much information, more than I'm going to be able to provide to you in this episode, so check out the AEC. You can enroll to vote online by going to aec.gov.au/enroll. If you want to fill out a paper form, you can pick one up from an AEC office or call 13 23 26, and then you can ask for one to be mailed to you. If you or someone you know doesn't have very good English skills, the AEC has translated information on its website, as well as a telephone interpreter service with a list of numbers for different languages provided. Once you have an enrollment form, it's super simple to fill out. Honestly, it's just a few questions. It's like, hey, what's your name? Where do you live? When were you born? The AEC is a big fan of your horoscope, but also a big fan of knowing which electoral division you're allowed to vote in. If you don't have a permanent address, there's an option for itinerant voters, which means people who travel around. There is a slightly different form where you can enroll for an address where you have lived at for longer than a month, or where your next of kin is registered or have the closest connection to, if none of that applies. Once you get a permanent address, you can enroll as a regular voter. You'll need to confirm your identity, which you can do with either a driver's license or a passport. If you don't have either of those, you need someone who is already enrolled to confirm your identity. It's pretty simple. Just grab an adult who's enrolled to vote and be like, hey, I need you to fill out this form. Can you do that for me? Sign here to prove that I am, in fact, not lying about who I am. It's what I had to do because, fun fact, I failed my driver's test 6 times, at least probably. You kinda stop counting after a while. If you did it online, click submit. You know how online forms are. If you did it via paper, you can scan and upload to the website at aec.gov.au/return, or take it to an AEC office near you, or mail it to them. And again, if you have any questions, you can call them on 13 23 26. Be brave. It's okay. I know personally I don't like phone calls, but it's gonna be okay and you can do it, or use the website to contact them. They get back to you pretty quickly and they're super helpful and really nice. I like them. And once you're enrolled to vote, ta-da! You did it! You can now vote in federal, state and territory and local elections, as well as referendums to change the constitution. You'll get a letter a few weeks later confirming you're on the electoral roll. You don't need to re-enroll for the next election. You just need to update your address whenever you've moved home and lived there for more than 1 month. You'll stay on the electoral roll until something happens that causes you to be removed, like dementia, death, or moving overseas for 6 years or longer, whichever one comes first. If you argue that it has been a mistake and you're actually not dead, you can get re-enrolled. If you're unsure that you've enrolled before, or if you're not sure your details are up to date, you can use the check function on their website. See, that was super quick and easy. There might be slight variations based on which state you live in, like one goes, "What's your occupation?" And you go, "YouTuber? Educational YouTuber?" I mean, my mum doesn't think that's a job, but like, whatever. It'll be fine. It's really simple. You can just say none. Why should you enroll to vote? Well, the first reason is it's the law. You have to. Now, I know some people get really frustrated when you say things like, "You have to do this," and they're like, no, have you heard of this Facebook group that I'm in that has some very interesting opinions? No, I've never talked to a lawyer. What are you talking about? But I would argue that even if it wasn't, the law, you should do it anyway, even if it was optional. It's not like voting is some frivolous thing. The women's rights movement didn't just be like, let's put on all this effort just for the fun of it. Something tells me, as an empath, that Aboriginal people who couldn't vote in the 1967 referendum that, allowed them to be part of the census and, counted in the list of people in Australia, I feel like they didn't enjoy that. Voting matters, and there can be incredibly historic things that you should have a voice on, not just, who forms government, but also referendums that change the constitution. But, it is compulsory to vote in Australia in federal and state elections, and also some local elections depending on where you live. And that, before someone comes after me in the comments being like, no, actually, it's not legally compulsory to vote. You just have to show up and have your name ticked off the electoral roll. That's it. No. The actual wording of the Act does say it is the duty of people to properly vote. Not just show up, to vote. This has been tested in multiple courts. Someone actually went to the High Court and tried to argue that because he did not like any of the candidates, therefore he cannot rank them preferentially because they have all an equal dislike to him. And the High Court judges were like, that's edgy, bro, cool. No, they were actually like, that's not a good enough reason. A tree died for you to participate in democracy. So mark your ballot. But also, voting is incredibly important. It's an amazing way to shape the country. Anyone who gets elected to Parliament can introduce a bill, propose amendments to bills, engage in debates, be on committees, vote for what becomes law, and that impacts how your taxes get spent, what infrastructure gets built, what the country does about climate change, laws about working conditions, or many other things that impact your daily life. And elections can be incredibly close, both with how many votes determine a seat and how many seats determine who wins. In 2010, both Labour and Liberal got the same amount of seats, and it was up to the independents as to who formed government. So a seat here or there to a different party or different ideologically aligned independent could have changed that. Sometimes election margins are in the thousands, and sometimes they're down to just a dozen or less votes. The seat of Werriwa once was won by only 7 votes. Many seats around the country are marginal, with some of them have results determined by less than 1% of the votes. There are approximately 700,000 people who are eligible to vote but aren't enrolled. That amount of people can make a marginal seat safe or kick out someone who's been in office for over 20 years. People can get disillusioned by living in safe seats for parties that they don't vote for, but massive swings can happen and margins can erode over time. The seat of Melbourne had been held by Labor for over 100 years, from 1904 to 2010, until it was then lost to the Greens. Wentworth has been a safe Liberal seat for as long as the Liberal Party has existed, being formed in 1945 until it was lost to an independent in 2018. Party leaders are usually taken from safe seats, but even that does not prevent them from being voted out. Liberal Prime Minister John Howard lost his seat of Bennelong to Labor in 2007. The seat had been safely held by the Liberals since 1949. This is not even the only time a Prime Minister has been voted out, the last time being Stanley Bruce in 1929. The truth is, no candidate is 100% guaranteed to win a seat, so it's up to you to be part of the democratic process, whether that's to vote someone out or vote to keep them in. Every single vote helps. The more people who vote, the better the result reflects the wants of the community. But your participation doesn't need to end there. You can sign petitions, protest, contact your members, and influence how other people feel about policy that matters to you. Democracy just isn't at the polls, but it's a powerful place to start. I will leave you with a quote from Douglas Adams to reflect upon. The single raindrop never feels responsible for the flood. So, enroll to vote right now if you haven't already. Get ready, because an election is coming. Thank you so much for enjoying this episode. I hope you learned something. Comment down below what you would like to learn about next. If you like, there is, as always, a copy of the script in the description, so you can see all the citations I used to make this video. But really, honestly, all the information you need to know is at aec.gov.au. And I will see you at the polls.